My name is John, and I'm part of the Ante Africa team, working on the digital transparency solutions, but also helping our clients and companies that we work with to really make sure that they achieve the transparency in their business that they need in order to succeed in the market. Today, our webinar topic is predominantly going to be focused on transparency and assessing your levels of transparency, your current levels of transparency, and giving you a real hands-on experience in terms of what with our tool that allows you, to make sure that you assess the different steps and the different levels of transparency within your company. So as I will share my screen so that you will be able to see our presentation. Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. So our company, let me just see. Okay, so we have been working on value chain development and sustainable value chain development for the past 15 years. And we have worked all over Europe and Africa. And we are really on the mission, to empower the African agribusinesses to improve their market position, and make these value chains shorter, more transparent, and consequently, also improve the livelihoods of the smallholder farmers that the agribusinesses we engage work with. So in today's webinar, the key topics are going to be transparency and why it's important. Then we will have a hands-on approach to our transparency stress test tool. And in the end, have a Q&A so that if you have any questions or if you have any feedback that we can just communicate at the end of the presentation. Okay, so transparency is something that has become really the #1 trend in the recent years, especially in 2021, and it's pushing the world towards making sure that it's not only about the price and the quality of the product, but it's also about the communication of the critical aspects that contribute to the ethics, that contribute to the environmental sustainability of the products, and that contribute, let's say, to the health of the community and the consumer of the products. So transparency is really sort of a movement, of building trust, of sustainability, of long-term growth, for individual companies and for the industry as such. And it's really about taking the leadership role by making sure that you are transparent. But what does transparency require from you? Transparency is something, that first of all, it requires you and your company to have a very good understanding in terms of what is happening in your supply chains, and to have sort of more sustainable practices, to initiate more sustainable practices that you will gain you advantage in the market. On the other hand, besides just knowing what is happening, transparency is also about communicating this information further, so communicating the information about your supply chain, about your company and your practices to the external world, so either to your buyers, to potential buyers, or to other relevant stakeholders who might have interest in the way that your company is operating. But where is the real pressure coming from? The big pressure on becoming transparent is coming from three key areas. First of all, it's coming from consumers. Second of all, it's coming from governments. And lastly, it's coming from regulators and NGOs. And all these entities, they have their own incentives into why they believe transparency is important. And they all are pressuring companies who are part of these value chains to become more transparent. And why is there such a buildup of pressure coming to the agribusinesses? It is simply because companies that are your buyers are being demanded from the regulators, are being demanded from consumers and other organizations to become transparent. And because they need to comply with this change, with these pressures, because they need to comply with these demands, they are looking for suppliers, they are looking for companies that they can work with that meet these criteria that it's expected of them. And this is why there is sort of a big buildup of pressure, coming to the agribusiness sector to the supplier industry, in terms of transparency, so that you can meet the standards and the requirements of the market. And what, like an example, of a real case that happened really not long ago, a bit earlier this year, is a show of this, So large companies in chocolate industry, such as Mars, Nestle, Hershey's, they were all now, or not all, not were, but are still in the middle of a major lawsuit in the US that is conducted against them in terms of the child slavery in their supply chain, just because they didn't have the transparency with their suppliers. They were not aware of child slavery and child labor happening in their supply of cocoa coming from Mali and the Ivory Coast, because they were not aware. These things happened under their watch, and now they're being penalized heavily for not having this level of transparency. And this is a show, that now companies like Mars and Slay Hershey's and others who are witnessing such development are going to have an incredible interest in making sure that they are getting the transparency they need from their supply. And this is just the biggest sort of case at the moment, but there are many, many cases which are all contributing again to what I said before, building up the demand for transparency from the market. Another case, is also in terms of this was more local to Kenya, that a lot of these distributors in Europe and buyers in Europe dropped some suppliers of avocados that they worked with for many years, simply because these suppliers did not meet the standards in terms of and were not transparent in terms of their human rights, in terms of their environmental sustainability and so on. Again, showcasing that the risks are very high if you are not transparent. But on the other hand, are there benefits to transparency? And the answer is, of course. The first one, is that by making sure that you're transparent, you can add value to your product. This means, that you can provide a product that is not only a high quality product, you can provide a quality product that has a story behind it, that is transparently communicating the things that the market wants to see. On the other hand, transparency enables you to build trust within the value chain. This means, that you can have a more trustworthy, more long-term relationships with your buyers, with your suppliers, and really have a value chain of trust. Thirdly, it opens up new trade opportunities because companies, as I showcased before, are looking for suppliers that are transparent, are looking for suppliers that are complying with these sort of new demands. You will have an opportunity by becoming transparent to really stand out in that market. And at the same time, because you will investigate what is going on in your supply chain, you will identify points which allow you to make improvements in your company and your supply chains. And in the end, all of this leads to an increase in returns, leads to increase in capacity to make investments, and leads to a better future for your company. So transparency is not just a requirement for compliance, but it is sort of becoming the new benchmark in business conduct. Okay, and now we come to the point, of what are really the three key pillars of transparency. The first one is knowing what is happening in the supply chain. Without you knowing what is happening in your supply chain, in terms of where the product comes from, in terms of how it is processed, in terms of the impacts that it has on the environment, in terms of how sustainable it is on the community, and like how fair it is to the community, there is nothing that can be done. So the first pillar of transparency is really knowing what is happening. The second one is that you need to document this information. By documenting, I mean that it can be put in a specific document, as the word suggests, but also just to have all of this information written down and organized so that this information can be then communicated in the third pillar of transparency, which is then the communication. And once you have everything well documented, it is really, the last milestone that you need to achieve in terms of becoming transparent, to communicate it with your buyers, to strengthen your existing buyer relationships, to communicate it to the market, to open new trade opportunities and find new buyers, as well as, with other maybe entities who are interested in your company. So if you are looking for support from some association, or if you are looking for support from some funding agency or so on, making sure that you are communicating this transparency, it is very critical to make sure that you can build trust around your company and about what you're doing, and will give you a leg up against the competition, and will give you a leg up in terms of also the relationships that you can develop with the relevant people. So we have, this webinar is all about assessing your transparency levels. And for that, we have developed a tool which we call our transparency stress test. And this transparency stress test is sort of an online survey which allows you to communicate, which allows you, to simply by answering 9 specific questions, allows you to get a good understanding of what your current situation is in terms of transparency. So I have created this QR code that you can scan with your smartphone, or here in the Zoom chat, we will send you the URL that you can click, and that will lead you to this transparency stress test tool. I'm going to leave this on here for about 10 more seconds so that you get an opportunity to scan the QR code or click on the link. And then I will share the screen to the transparency stress test tool so that we can go together through it, answer it, and in the end, you will get your sort of transparency score, which we can then interpret and give some suggestions in terms of what are some of the next steps that you and your company can take to take transparency of your company to the next level. So okay, so I will stop sharing this. Okay, the link is in the chat. So okay, so let me now share the screen to our transparency stress test tool. Can you see my screen well?
Yes.
Okay, that is great. Okay, so if you have all now access to the tool, either through the QR code or through the link, I suggest that we just go quickly through it. So first of all, I would just like to know your company name so that we can have for reference. So I will just enter the Antea Africa company name. Okay. And then the first question, it's about where does your product come from? And here, as we said before, the 3 key pillars of transparency. It's about, do you know where it's coming from? Are you documenting the exact origin of the product? And are you communicating this documented origin of the product? So for me, I will just have a mix of the answers, so that we can go through quickly. So, okay, the next question is about knowing who are the actors involved in your value chain. So that can be actors such as the farmers, maybe some associations, farmer cooperatives, maybe the processors who are making the product before you, and so on. So here, again, do you know who they are, or do you not know who they are? Do you have it all documented, and are you communicating to the market? Okay. So let me give you a few more seconds to answer this question. Okay. All right. So the fourth one, is about the procedures to ensure quality of your product. So do you have standardized quality assurance procedures or not? Have you documented your standardized quality procedures? And are you communicating these standardized quality assurance procedures to the relevant stakeholders? So I'll just give you a few more seconds to answer this question. Okay. Next one is about the product specification. Product specification is a document, which is very important in terms of communication to the market, especially, when maybe you get in front of a potential buyer and this buyer asks you for something. First of all, they will ask you for a product specification. So this document that includes all the key information about the product, about the quality, about the labeling, about um, the origin. So whether you have it or not, do you have it in a well-structured specification document? Are you communicating this or sharing this document with the world? Okay. All right. So then it's about the processes that go on into your product from the farm level to the final product that you sell to the market. So again, do you know what is going on in the production processes? Are you documenting these processes and are you communicating these processes? Okay. So in specifically, in the recent years, there is a big development in terms of what the market expects, also in terms of social responsibility and social impacts of your company. And this is something, that is especially true, if you want to export your products to high value markets such as the US or Europe, Asia, or even, increasingly more, even if you are trading in Africa, this is something that is extremely important. And it is, again, do you know about your sort of social impacts that you have maybe on the farmers that you work with or the community that you are working with? Um, do you have this sort of social impacts well documented? Do you have sort of social responsibility practices in a structured way? And are you actively communicating this information? Okay. Then, do you support the farmers in improving their farming practices? Yes, no, yes, documented, and then communicating it. Okay. And about the environmental sustainability. So this is also something, that the same as social responsibility, environmental sustainability is becoming very relevant, for people when they make choices who to work with. So do you know about the environmental sustainability and impacts that you have? Do you have it documented and are you communicating? Okay. And the last, is about the traceability of your product. As you probably know, traceability is very important. So do you have a traceability system in place? Do you have documented the traceability system? And do you know the traceability to the farm level, or to which level do you know it? And then are you communicating this product traceability? Okay. So once you have answered all the questions, there are 9 questions plus the company name. Once you have entered all the answers, you will be able to submit the, the survey and you will receive a score. So this score is your transparency score according to our transparency stress test tool, and just, so that we do not spend too much time on this, I think that it's important to at least have understanding, what your score means. So in terms of the score, there are um, a few grades, let's say. So if you have achieved below 35%, your company should really start focusing on, first of all, identifying and knowing more about your value chains. If your score is between 35 and 70%, your first focus should be first to document all the key all the key details about the value chain. So what we discussed about the origin, about the actors involved, about the quality assurance, and all of this. So if your score is along those lines, it is really important to improve on the documentation and noting down the details about your company. If your score is between 71% and 100%, and like let's say 95%, That means, that you should really focus on the improving of the communication that you have to the market. So improving the way that you communicate the details about your value chain, about your impacts, to the market. And of course, between the 95-100%, you are more or less very transparent and perfect, and I guess that in that regard, if your score is along those lines, it means that you are more or less ready to implement transparency as a strategic tool of your company in the next stages of growth and in the next stages of development of how you are approaching the markets, and really utilize transparency as a tool that separates you from the market, from the rest, that allows you to build trust in the company and allows you to scale your sales of your products. Okay, so let me share my presentation screen. Okay, so okay, so achieving transparency, this test that we have done, was the first step that needs to be taken so that you understand what is your current level of transparency. And once you have this, you need to set sort of goals in terms of what you would like to achieve. As I said, our recommendations for those individual scores, are, maybe you should, at some point, you should focus on more on the understanding what is happening in the value chain, or documenting or communicating, So for you, it's very important that once you know the situation, that you maybe figured out using the transparency stress test tool, is to set goals. Once you have these goals, it is very important to collect information from the value chain that you see, so that your value chain can give you information to identify issues that still need to be resolved. And once you have identified the issues that need to be resolved, to solve them, to help you improve on that regard. And once you have done that, you are then able to use transparency as a strategic tool for your company to disclose the information to the relevant stakeholders and to become a fully transparent company of the future. Okay, so at this point, if there are any questions, please let me know. We can do the either send them in the chat or just speak up, and we will be able to address those questions for you.
Hey, Yon, I have a question. If I am an agribusiness and I've never heard about social impacts before, could you give an example what my social impact in a community could be?
Yes. So, for example, like companies that we work with, they have, let's say, positive social impacts coming from, let's say, that they are supporting the farming community around them, that they buy from them, they enable that these farmers that they work with have a good market for their products. Some companies that we work with go even further in a way that they maybe pay for the health insurance of those that are in their community, or that are trying to provide maybe school equipment for the kids of those farmers, and so on. So those are things that are very often happening, but it is critical that these things get communicated, because these are things that the market values. And if you can transparently showcase those impacts that you are creating on the community around you, it will make sure that you stand out from others. It will make you a more appealing supplier for a lot of the buyers who are now considering this as important as the quality of the product or the price itself.
So basically, it can be that me as an agribusiness, I am already making a lot of social impact by providing jobs to people. And I would even be able to sell more of my products if I would be communicating
Yes,
those impacts on the market.
exactly. Of course, like, it is not guaranteed, but we have experience, working with companies in this space across East Africa, where that was really the case. That by making sure that you communicate all of this, in the end, as I said before, it can lead to sort of more sales for you. It can lead, to improved capacity to also make investments into your company and make sure that your company can grow.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions at this point?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead, please.
So for those companies that have posted below that 5, as you just said, are you like working with them to be able to score better?
Okay, so you're asking about scoring better on the stress test tool?
Yes, you
Yes.
just said that if your scores are below that 5, you said, or that one?
Yes.
That 5. So what I'm asking is, because of course the whole idea about this program is that companies are able to improve their marks so that they fit into what is required in the market.
Yes.
Am I right? Then if
Yes.
there are those companies that are not scoring better.
Yes. So
are you moving with them to make sure that they start scoring better?
Yes. So what I suggest, is that we are here, our company, is devoted to making sure that this transparency is improved across EAC agribusiness community. And
Yes.
we want to support companies to transition, and score better on this, but not just to score better, but to actually achieve the milestones which allow you to score better. Scoring better is easy. You just click the other answer, but making sure that your company is truly meeting those criteria, we can have, for example, we can schedule a separate meeting, a separate call where we go into individually, so if you would like, that we can schedule an individual call where we go and we check, what are some of the key things that you need to improve, and then give you guidance in terms of improving it in your company.
Oh, okay, thanks.
So you have my email address, we will send a follow-up email to this webinar to everybody who attended and registered for the event, so that you will have access, to our contact information. And if you would like, we can then schedule a call and just individually go through it, maybe go again through the assessment of the transparency score, and then give you advice, for free. We give you free advice on how to improve this for your company.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, so if there is not any other question, I would like to thank everybody. Okay, so here is my email in the group chat.
Okay, let me just get it.
Okay, if I would like to thank, everybody for taking the time, also for everybody who is viewing live on Facebook. I know that our sort of support is more applicable, to having you answer questions for those who are participating on Zoom. So I would really recommend that you, for the future webinars, if you're interested, check in on our website. You can find all the future webinars and register for the Zoom so that you can ask questions and participate in the discussions regarding the webinars. So we will send a follow-up email. We will also post the recording of this webinar so that you can always revert back to it if you are interested in any specific information or any specific details. You can always access the video of this webinar and enjoy the content that we provide.